So yeah, as it is written, you can watch the session live on YouTube. So if you have some friends or colleagues who are interested in Power BI or Lionel Messi, just feel free to send them the link. You can find it on my Twitter profile. The same link will be available after the session. So if you want to see the session just after, it will be still available. So welcome. I'm just gonna quickly introduce myself. It's supposed to be working. Yep. My name is Tristan. I am a Power BI consultant at Azeo, a Microsoft partner in France. I'm mostly in charge of developing Power BI activities, so consulting services, trainings, awareness. We really need it in France. Back in February 2017, I created with my manager the Power BI user group in Paris, namely Club Power BI. So we organize monthly meetups in Paris about any topics related to Power BI, such as data visualization, DAX, Power Query, Power Apps, Flow. And it's quite exciting to see this community growing so fast. We have something like 450 members already, so that's pretty good. And yeah, if you come to Paris, we will be more than happy to welcome you. Obviously, it's better for you if you can speak or at least understand French, but anyway. And I'm also what we call a data stories publisher. So I publish a lot of data stories on Power BI. So feel free to follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm quite active on these social networks. I share a lot of things around Power BI, DAX, data visualization, best practices, and so on. So yeah, I will be more than happy to have a chat with you. So the session of today is Sports Analytics, Lionel Messi. Actually, I'm going to show you how I built this Power BI dashboard on the football player Lionel Messi. So basically, we're going to rebuild this page of the report, the first page. And yeah, so this is the goal of the session. I make sure I will share with you some tips and tricks and some best practices I learned in my Power BI journey. So, yeah, just maybe a notice. I mean, even if you're not a real soccer fan, or even if you hate Lionel Messi and prefer Cristiano Ronaldo or whatever, it doesn't matter. I make sure you still catch some good stuff on Power BI, and yeah, I make sure you learn some stuff. So, I think what we are seeing here is what I would call the end result, right? And this is theoretically the, can you see the screen? Yeah. The visible part of the iceberg, what I call the dashboard iceberg. As you can imagine, I had to do a lot of things before I could end up with this result, right? So I just list here all the elements that I needed to do. And you could obviously apply everything that you're going to see here to any of your self-service or Power BI projects, right? So the first thing is that you need to connect to the data. You need to grab data from different sources and then maybe clean it. I'm sure this is your favorite one. Most of the time, the data is not very clean. So you need to reshape it. You need to reorganize it. That's what I've done here. Modeling, because you have most of the time many tables in your data model. And you want to make sure you create the relevant links, the correct links between the table. Then analysis, you are creating the custom KPIs, probably using your best friend again, the DAX language. Visualization, so here you choose the best graphs, colors, and so on. And sharing. And I think this is really important because once and only once you perform all these steps, then you are able to deliver a dashboard that other people can benefit from. And this is really important because this slide also shows that Power BI is not just a simple data visualization tool, right? It's an awesome tool to visualize data and to represent your data, but this is much more than that. And having this slide in mind, we have more or less the agenda of the session of today, right? I'm gonna show you through the example of the dashboard of Lionel Messi, how Power BI can give you some comfort and some autonomy for each of these steps. Is that okay for you? Yeah. So I think before we go straight to the tool and get some data, I think we should all ask ourselves these questions before starting a Power BI dashboard, right? Because, I mean, Power BI is really good to produce insights, to produce beautiful things, but at the end of the day, the real objective of Self-Service BI and of Power BI is to provide dashboards which can support decision-making, which can help business users monitor their business and so on. And before just going to the tool straight and try to figure out how we're going to import the data, maybe it's worth spending 2 minutes just asking ourselves this question: where am I going? What are the metrics I want to measure? So in this case, I asked myself this question: what do I want to measure? And in the context of Lionel Messi, I ended up with these metrics. Simple one, we're not going to do advanced stuff, not predictive analytics, no machine learning, simple stuff. I want to represent these metrics: the number of games, number of goals, goals per game, assists, because it's quite a good KPI as well to measure the influence of the player, and also the percentage of games won. So these are the metrics I want to see, I want to measure in my dashboard. In business intelligence, as you may know, we talk about facts, right? Now come the dimensions. How do I want to see these metrics? So I wanted to focus on 2 dimensions, which are calendar, because I want to be able to see these metrics over time, and competition, because I want to be able to see, again, these metrics for specific competitions, probably the most important ones, which are Liga and Champions League with his club, and World Cup and Copa America with his national team, Argentina. So now I know where I want to go. I clearly identified a perimeter. Then I need something else, right? The first step of the iceberg to get some data, well, I need to find a source which is reliable and which I'm going to use for my dashboard. So after a few research on the web, I found this website, which is pretty awesome. If you are a soccer fan or if you like Barcelona, I really encourage you to go and check this website. I'm going to quickly present you how it is, how it looks like. So I'm just going to go here to the internet. So this is the website. It has been created by Ramon Min. He's a journalist, I think, in the Netherlands. And he has been doing an amazing job centralizing all the data from Messi's games since he started in 2004 in the professional field. So as you can see, there are many things, like all the goals, games, assists, even really precise data, statistics. So for example, you can see the goals scored by Messi in a really nicely formatted table, like the competition, the home team, the score, and so on. So this is my starting point, and this is the main source we're going to use through the demo. And fortunately, as you may know, this is a web source, and in Power BI, I have a web connector. This will be really easy to grab the data. Okay, so back to the slides. Well, I think it's enough now. It's time for demo. Enough of talking. Now we're going to clearly use Power BI, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks. Okay, so I'm on Power BI desktop. We start from a blank page, nothing, but we know where we are going. So first type of the iceberg, I want to get some data. So I'm just going to grab the web connector, and I'm going to simply paste this URL, which gives me the games played by Lionel Messi and a few other information, such as the date of the game, the goals, assists, and so on. So I'm just simply going to copy this, paste it. Power BI is making the job for us, connects to the data source, identifies all the tables which are currently in the website, on the website. Actually, on this website, on this particular URL, there is only one table, which is this one. So I can tick it. I have the preview on the right side, as you know. I can either load it or edit here we're gonna edit because I want to show you some cleansing and yeah, preparing how to prepare your data efficiently. Actually, we need it here because, for example, you can see that the headers are not really user-friendly, and probably there are some columns that I don't want to use on my dashboard. So I'm gonna edit the query. Okay, so from now, most of your decisions should be business user centric, right? We are in a self-service BI context. You want to make sure you can deliver some content which is useful to other people, right? So this is the staging area, the most important part. But at the same time, I know this will probably not be the most exciting part of the demo, but still, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that you probably don't know on Power Query. So the first step that you should always apply in any of your queries is this button, choose columns, okay, which for some reason is not that popular and not that famous. But trust me, this is really useful because this will help you just pick up the relevant columns that you want to keep on your database, or can be convenient as well sometimes, you can reach some particular columns. So when you have database which have hundreds of columns, this feature is really, really useful. And in a self-service BI context, it's even more convenient, more useful, because just get rid of the columns that you don't want to use. Well, your business users don't want to be annoyed by useless columns, so just get rid of them. Another advantage is the storage. As you may know, Power BI uses an in-memory columnar storage, so it doesn't store the data row by row, but column by column, right? So if you want to optimize the size of your models, plus give a good experience to your business users, just get rid of the columns you don't need, right? But to do so, you need to make the effort to identify a perimeter, right? What we have done in the beginning. So now I know the columns that I need for my analysis. I'm gonna just go to choose columns. And we said that we wanna see goals and assists, per date and competition, right? I don't need anything else. So here are the columns I'm gonna focus on. Well, we are a bit lucky because as you can see, the data is already pretty clean, right? I don't have so many things to do right now. Probably I could rename the headers because I know that these are the fields I'm gonna find in the report view, and my users are gonna find in the report view as well. Okay, assists. Now the data types, this has to be a date. I wanna see these over time. This will be a text, and these will be integers, a whole number. Yeah. Okay. The last thing I could do, by the way, is, as you can see here, the competition column. These are not really the name of the competitions, right? I have the first 3 letters, which are actually the code of the competition, and then the real name of the competition, right? The real name that I want to see on my dashboard. So I could show you how to clean this column and how to make it more meaningful, but think about it. I'm here to give you some best practices, and you should not apply too many advanced steps on fact tables, okay? This is a fact table. In this example, this has a minor impact cleaning it because it only has 4 columns and 456 rows. But in your business context, I'm sure you end up with fact tables which are much larger. And it's not a best practice to apply so many steps on these fact tables because it will make your refresh slower and it will have a negative impact on the performance, right? So rather than trying to clean this, it's a better practice to create a separate table, a dimension table, which will actually make the link between this weird column with the code and the actual name of the competition and the name of the competition that I want to see on my dashboard, right? So this is the row of dimensions tables, right? Question? No? No, okay. So actually, I made it on purpose, but this database is not complete. There is something missing, which is, has Messi won or not? Okay, I just know the day, the competition, the goals, and the assists. Well, actually, in these, so you can see the steps. At this stage, I had some information about the score, who played, and so on. So I could, with custom columns, you can add some columns through the query editor as well using the M language. I could try with if statements or probably lists functions, trying to figure out who won, because I don't have the information directly here. But I'm not going to use this method. Instead, I'm going to show you some Power Query functions and parameters, because this information is actually within the URL of the data source. If we go back to the website, actually here, these are only the games that were won by Messi, right? And this has an impact on this URL, okay? Actually, this will just have an impact on this small part of the URL. So if I click on games lost, let's say, as you can see, I have exactly the same format. So here I have only the games which are actually lost by Messi. And as you can see, the URL is exactly the same, except this small part of the URL, right? So I'm going to show you how you can turn a query into a function and then grab the data really quickly from the website for all the information that I need. So that is to say, games that were actually won, draw, or lost, okay? There is another method, which is clearly not the best practice, is to raise 3 separate queries for games lost, games won, and games draw, and then append the content of these 3 tables. We're going to make something a little bit smarter, leveraging the power of Power Query functions. So let's get back to the editor. So as you may know, the underlying language behind this Power Query is called M, okay, Power Query Formula Language. It is applied anytime you click on the button here. You can see the steps and the famous M language. Well, at any time, you can modify this language through the advanced editor right here. So I'm going to quickly show you. I'm sure there are no programmers in the room. I'm not a programmer, but you're going to see how easy it is to turn a query into a function and how you can leverage functions to get insights from data. So here, this is a query, right? This is a table. I'm going to turn this table into a function. So going back to the advanced editor, and this is the syntax that you have to apply to turn it as a function. I'm just going to create a parameter, which I'm going to call page, and it will be a text, page as text. Okay. So this is how you can pass a parameter to a query, and thus this will turn into a function. Yep.
Will this demo be available at the user group as well, or also with the video?
Yes, everything will be shared. So the demo is recorded. You will be able to see it after, and I will also share with you the p/rx file and yeah, all the information that you need. Yeah. So I was yeah. So this is how you can pass a parameter to a query. You can actually pass as many parameters as you want. Okay, blah 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 blah. Okay. So here I just need one, which will be this part. Okay, the number 3 that I want to make dynamic, right? So rather than having fixed, just gonna get rid of this and say end page. So I'm referring to the parameter. Okay, done. It's not harder than that. I'm creating a parameter and I'm using it in my query, right? So here, I'm just gonna click on done. And this turns out to be a function. This is not anymore a query. You can see the small item here. This is a function, right? So this function has one parameter, which is the small part of the URL that I want to make dynamic. So I can invoke this function. So for example, I can type in 3. And this will bring in the data from the games that were actually, I think 3 was 1, right? So I can invoke as many times as I want. but I'm going to do something smarter. I'm not going to invoke separately the different queries. Instead, I'm going to create a parameter table using this feature, enter data, because as you may know, in Power Query, you can pull data from many different sources. I think there are more than 70 native connectors right now. There are even custom connectors that you can use and create thanks to the M language. But there is also this possibility to enter data manually through Power Query. And this is really useful when you want to create some internal parameters which are part of your PBIX file, right? So just before I do so, I'm just going to rename this function get data. And I'm going to create kind of a mapping table, which will be called main. So I'm just going to name this code 3, 4, 5. This corresponds to a result 1 draw rust. Okay. This is my parameter table. And I'm going to use this column of this table as the parameter of my function. So as you may know, in Power Query, you can add some columns to tables. And there is this new feature, which I think it was out probably the beginning of 2017 or end of 2016. You can invoke custom functions in your queries, in all the queries which are available in your PBIX file. So here, I'm just going to invoke a custom function, which I can name it result. Yeah, so let's say, all right. So the function I want to use to add my column will be get data. Okay, I only have one function in this query. It has one parameter, and actually the parameter is the code. So this will be the column of this table, right? So I'm going to click on OK. I have a brand new table, a brand new column called R, which stores for each element of the table the actual table that I need. So these are the metrics, the table related to the games won by Messi. This is the table where I show the games that were draw and lost. So perfect. I managed to grab the data in a single table through a function. So I'm not just gonna expand this column, load more. Okay. And done. Now I have 700 rows, and I have all the information that I need. The dates, the competition, the goals, but also the results of my games, right? So actually, I'm just gonna quickly get rid of this column. I don't need it anymore. And just make sure, yeah, for some reason the data types were actually, it's a bit of random behavior sometimes. Whole number, okay, great. So here in this table, I have all the information that I need. So as you can see, pretty useful to leverage functions. Now we have to take care of the dimensions tables. So the first one is competition, and the second one is calendar, because I want to see these metrics over time. And it's a best practice to have a specific table dedicated to time, right? To perform time intelligence calculations. So I'm going to show you how you can create calendar table in Power Query. Well, in Power BI. There are a few methods to do so. I don't know which one you prefer and how you create calendar tables in Power BI. I think there are, yeah, you can grab calendar tables from Excel files, from Access SQL Server. You can use the DAX language as a query language to create a brand new table, which will have all the information that you need about the dates, such as the year, the quarter, and so on. But you can also use the M language and functions to create your calendar tables. So this is the method I'm going to show you right now. You're going to see it's not very complicated because now you know how function works. It's going to be pretty obvious to you. So I will just create a blank query. Okay. And this is the function that I created to create my internal calendar table within my PBRX file. So I'm just gonna copy it and paste it here. And as you can see, this used to be a query, okay? I had a query adding some information about my dates, such as the month, the year, the month name, the quarter. And I turned this query into a function using 3 parameters: the start date, the end date, and a third parameter which is the term. So I just chose a random name. Actually, there is one information I wanted, one additional information I wanted to have on my dashboard is not only the calendar year, but the football year, okay? Because as you may know, the football season does not fully match with the calendar year, right? We just started the 2017-2018 season. So I wanted to be able to see my metrics either by calendar or football season. And to know this, I had to know when does the season switch, right? So I think this is always around the 13th of August. When you're around the 10th or 13th of August, you are switching from the calendar year to the other football season. So this is the row of this third parameter. It will just tell me when does the season switch, okay? So this is my function. And I'm gonna use it to create my calendar table. So the start date, I think, was around this date. So this is the date. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's this one. The end date, we're gonna put, yeah, let's say today. Okay, so here you can see I'm invoking the parameters of the function to create my brand new table. The third argument will be, okay, when does the season switch? Let's say on every 13th of August. So these are the parameters. Probably I would have a question, why not making them dynamic? Good question. I wanted to let the users to be able to create their calendar tables within M. And also I wanted to show you how you can leverage the power of functions. But it's true that you could actually make these parameters dynamic, okay, by using list functions and maybe getting the mean and the max date of your fact table, and then using these dates as as an interval. Okay, so I'm gonna invoke it, and done. I have my calendar table. So I'm just gonna name this calendar. The best practice is to group your queries in the query editor. So I'm gonna create a group, which will be fact. So this is I think a best practice to distinguish the role of your different tables. It's especially useful when you have many tables in your models. So I'm gonna put main on the fact. I will create a new group, which will be dimensions. I will put my calendar table, and I will let these two functions in the other queries folder. Let's name this get calendar. Okay, last one is the competition one. So I have here a small mapping table, which gives me a mapping between the actual code that is found in the fact table and the name of the competition I want to see on my dashboard, plus the type of the competition. You should always make your dimension as complete as possible, because usually they only have maybe 20% of the total storage of your model. So you are only playing with the fifth of your model. But at the same time, these are typically the kind of information that will bring some depth and some grain to the analysis. Because here, just having the information about the code of the competition, I will be able to slice my data by type. Is it a competition with his club or the national one? Okay. So I could raise a query on the Excel file, but because I want to go fast and show you how you can manage gateways and so on, I'm going to make it a little bit simpler. I don't expect these competitions to really change unless Messi quits Barcelona and joins Neymar in Paris Saint-Germain. But I don't expect him to do so. So we're going to assume it's quite fixed. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this and again use the enter data. probably not the best practice, but competition. Okay, so maybe you notice that I'm only focusing on particular competition here. I don't have all the competitions which are in my fact tables. We will see the impact in a few minutes. Okay, so now we spent a lot of time on Power Query, but trust me, this will be so much easier now for me to analyze and visualize the data. So I'm just gonna close and apply those steps and load the updated version of my data. So we did the first two steps of the iceberg. Now it's gonna be much quicker for us. We're gonna actually build the data model, right? Create the relationships between the table. Here it's gonna be pretty obvious. I only have 3 tables, 1 fact table and 2 dimensions. So this is my fact table, right? These are my dimensions. I'm gonna create the link between the tables. As you may know, 2 conditions to create a relationship between tables in Power BI. The first one is that you need to have a common key, which we have between the tables. And the second one, which is sometimes a little bit harder to manage, is that at least one side of the relationship, one side of the common key must be unique. You must have unique values. I don't know if any of you attending my session yesterday about many-to-many in DAX, where I've shown many different methods using the DAX language to cope with these kind of issues. This is called many-to-many, where you don't have uniqueness of values from one side of the relationships. Can be sometimes tough to cope with this kind of situation. The video has been recorded, so you will be able to see it if you want. Well, here I don't have this kind of problem because my calendar table has unique dates. So I'm going to be able to link it to my main table through a one-to-one relationship. This is a bit a particular case here because my fact table only have one date, one single date, because the grain of my data is at the game level, and I only have one game per day, right? But usually you would expect that your fact table are on the many side of the relationship, which is the case here for the competition, okay? On the, oh, sorry, it's the code one. So here it's the case. I'm on the one side of the relationship to the many side of the relationship, and it flows like this. Okay, so here a pretty simple data model. A last thing I wanted to show you on this data model, a small tip, is the ability to hide some fields in the report view. So this is really useful, really convenient, especially, again, in a self-service BI context. You want to make sure your users only slice the data through the dimensions, right? You want to make sure when they will use some charts and line charts and so on, they will just slice the data through the competitions and not through these keys right here. So you can simply say, okay, the date, I need it for the relationship, right? This is the field that is used for my relationship, but I don't want to see it in my report. So I'm just going to click on hide in report view. Okay, this feature. Hide in report view. The same for my competition. This is used for my relationship, but I don't want to be annoyed in the report view. So this is really useful. Again, I'm not deleting these columns. They are just hidden in the report view. If I go back to the report on the main table, this doesn't appear. So this is really useful because now I'm sure that my business users through Power BI service or even on Power BI desktop, if they don't go to the data tab or the relationship type, they won't even see that there is this competition and date table in my fact table. And trust me, this is really useful because now you're going to be sure that they will slice the data through the dimensions. This will make their analysis much easier, and also this will optimize the responsiveness of your measures. Okay, so third step done. We built the data model. The fourth one is about analyzing it, right? So here I have some metrics, which are the assists, the goals, and so on. Well, this is called implicit measures. Those are whole number fields. Power BI is able to aggregate them over time, over over anything that you want. You can even see them by average, minimum, maximum, and so on. This is a best practice to recreate in DAX these implicit measures explicitly using the DAX language. Mainly because this will make your Q&A in Power BI service a little bit more convenient, and you will be able to embed the measures that you have created in other measures. So trust me, this is really useful, and you should really rebuild all the implicit measures explicitly using the DAX language. So I'm just going to create a new measure, which will be called total goals, which will be the sum of my goals, right? So pretty obvious. Just going to make sure this is nicely separated. The same for assists, probably. Same as assists. Okay. Now, I need two other metrics, if you remember the questions that we asked ourselves at the beginning. The first one is the number of games, right? So here, I don't have the information straight. I don't have a metric which tells me, okay, this is the number of games. So I need to know how I can actually interpret the database and how I can translate my business requirement into a DAX function. So, as I said, on the main table, the grain is at the game level, right? So one row equals one game, right? So if I count the number of rows I have in this database, well, actually I'm counting the number of games, right? So I'm just going to create a measure and the games, which simply will be the count rows of my fact table. And then another one, the goals per game. And now you will see how useful it is to have these explicit measures, because I'm going to be able to reference them in other measures. So I'm going to say goals per game. And thanks to IntelliSense, I'm going to use the divide function and say, well, this will be actually the total goals divided by the number of games. And as you can see, this is really, really useful to have created these measures explicitly. Another best practice is when you have complicated measures, always split them into several pieces, right? So I need a measure which tells me the number of goals per game. Well, I'm creating a measure which computes the number of goals, another measure which computes the number of games, and then I'm dividing them. So you should always do this kind of stuff, separating your measures. And the games, and I'm going to cope with the divide by 0 scenario with the alternate result. Oops, sorry. Enough. Goals per game. Okay. So now we have 20 minutes left. The visualization part. Well, the first thing that you should use, I guess, is the show grid lines, okay, to align your graphs. I'm going to quickly show you some tips and tricks to make your report a little bit nice to see. So actually, let's go. It's pretty easy now. I'm going to try to visualize my data, let's say, for a competition, the number of goals, drag and drop, easy to use. Okay. So this is the first graph from my report. And as you can see, let me just quickly sort this. There is this annoying blank, okay? This is really painful. I'm sure you have all experienced this before. I'm going to display a metric over a certain dimension, and I have this blank element. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can get rid of this. But first, you need to understand why there is this blank element. This will help you clean and build better dashboards. So if you remember well, when we had our competition table, we only had certain competitions, right? There are other competitions which are actually in my fact table, in my main table, but they are not in this table, in my dimension table. And Power BI, the engine, in order to preserve the relationship between the competition and the main table, creates a blank element which is hidden from the user. Okay, you don't actually see it in the data view, but it's just here to preserve the data model and to maintain the relationship between your competition and your main table. Well, there are a few things that you can do to get rid of this stuff. The first one is probably to clean your competition table and to make it as complete as possible. The second method is to simply get rid of the competitions that you don't want to see in the fact table, probably using Power Query and the filter functions. I'm just going to show you another method, which is probably not the best practice, but just to show you the page level filters, right? So I'm going to go back to the view, and I'm going to say, okay, on my report, I want to see anything but the blanks. Okay, so select all, but not the blanks. Okay, so now I'm able to focus only on the competitions that matters for me, which are Liga, Champions League, World Cup, and Copa America. Okay. So now a little bit of tricks for data visualization. I'm gonna quickly sort this. Let's say I'm gonna remove this, data labels, a bit bigger, probably the title, gonna make it a little bit better as well. The goals, font color, blank, background. Okay, this probably using a border as well. Okay, great. Maybe a little bit bigger the axis. So now I have my first graph. And this is a really nice trick, which is obvious, but I don't know if you use it. If you want to have, let's say, a certain, how to say, if you want to make your dashboard look clean and uniform across the page, just format one graph, and you can just simply leverage the most the most famous shortcut in the world, which is simply copy paste, right? So I'm just gonna copy paste this graph, and I just don't want to see it by competition, or yeah, I want to see it by competition, but for the assists, right? And I'm done. Oh, sorry. I sort this out and title assist. Great. Another one, I want to see this over time. So I'm just going to leverage my dates. Well, actually, I'm going to see the by calendar year, my goals and assists. Okay, so I'm not going to build the whole dashboard with you. You get the point. I mean, just using the snap to grids to align your charts, choosing the best way to visualize the data. Probably you could leverage the themes which were released a few months ago to have your custom colors within your Power BI reports. I'm gonna start from, I guess it's this one. So it's actually the same data model, all the same cleansing and so on. It's just a little bit more advanced in the visualization part, because I don't want to show you repetitive tasks, copy paste, formatting, and so on. So this is actually exactly the same dashboard, right? I just did a little bit of formatting. So the first thing I did is to actually put a page background here. Okay, I had a picture of a field that I brought into the dashboard. I also incorporated an image by leveraging this simple stuff. Where is it? Well, you can see it. Yeah, image right here. Yeah, so this is the dashboard. Pretty simple to understand. I also imported this graph, which is not a native visual. This is a custom visuals So I'm sure nearly all of you have heard about this or maybe use them in your reports. So you can actually grab visuals which are not native but which are developed by the community directly from Power BI Desktop from the, I think, July 2017 update. So you can actually access to I don't know how many custom visuals that you can simply bring in into your report, and it definitely extends your visualization possibilities within the tool, right? So here, there are many different stuff which are pretty interesting. There is one which is a little bit fun about some fish, you know, in an aquarium. And the bigger is the fish, the bigger is your metric, for example. Well, I'm not sure you will see, you will display this to your boss, but anyway. I just imported this one, which is a chiclet slicer. It makes the slicing a little bit more convenient, okay? Some tips and tricks. While you can use the hierarchy here, you can leverage the fact that we have several columns in our dimension table about the competition. So you can easily adjust the grain of the data and see it by club, national, or by competition. You can obviously benefit from the fact that your graphs are interactive. I made also sure that my interactions between my graphs are okay, right? So you can easily edit the interactions of different graphs of the same page. Another tip I wanted to show you here is the ability to adjust the axis. So I'm sure you may have had this need before, is the ability to switch axis. So for the moment in Power BI, you cannot use a measure as an axis, right? Because measures have to store scalar values. They cannot store tables. And it might be a little bit hard to make your axis dynamic. Well, I'm gonna quickly show you this tip because I used it for this dashboard. As I said in the introduction, I wanted to be able to see my metrics by calendar year, but also by football year, right? So I just leveraged the hierarchy of the axis and put my year and my football season. And I can peacefully use this feature to see my data either by calendar year or football year. And it automatically adjusts. So this is a cool trick. If you want to see your metrics over time at different grain, you can use this feature, the hierarchy feature, to change the nature and the actual axis of your graph. I would expect in the future, you can submit some ideas on powerbidis.com that we have the ability to make more things about this dynamic axis. Okay, so I have all the metrics that I need, the games, the goals, assists, goals per games. These are simple metrics here that I used using the measures that we created together. And as I said, the real goal is not to produce a beautiful thing, but to find some insights. Actually, I found pretty interesting stuff. For example, here, this graph tells me, okay, how many goals, how many games per goal Messi played. So here, apparently Messi played 245 goals with games, with 0 goal. And here, let's say this one, he played 95 games with 2 goals, right? And I found something interesting. For example, in 2000 for this season, as you can see, he played more games with 2 goals than games with 0 goals. Even more interesting, if I click on this one, so all the games where Messi scored once, all the other graphs update and are filtered. And as you can see at the bottom, when Messi scores, his team has 80% chance of winning. So this is pretty huge, right? And showed this to a friend a few days ago, and he told me, man, you should bet. You should bet because with this kind of information, it's pretty easy to predict or at least anticipate the result of his team, right? Only 5% chance of Barcelona losing when Messi scores just once. This is crazy. Well, obviously this is historic data. It's not gonna predict the future, but at least it gives quite a lot of insights. Actually, this is only the first page of the report. If you go to the real dashboard that I published on the web, there are a few other insights I found which are pretty interesting. The players he interacts with the most are Suarez and not Neymar. Not anymore because Neymar is not in Barcelona anymore. But I mean, even when he was there, he was not the player he was interacting with the more. Yeah, a few other insights that if you're a football fan, you will be really happy to learn actually. Well, we have 10 minutes. Just gonna quickly show you the last part of the iceberg, the sharing part, and also how to make this fully automated. So I'm happy with my dashboard. It has some insights. It looks pretty okay. So as you may know, I can publish it to Power BI service. So the cloud version of Power BI, the web portal. I can either publish this work on my personal workspace or in my Office 365 groups, okay? So this is a pro feature, the fact that you can publish some dashboards, some reports, sorry, in Office 365 groups. So here I'm gonna publish this to my own workspace. It's gonna land to Power BI service, hopefully. Let me just check the connection. Oh, okay. I have another one I can show you, which is pretty much the same. So if it doesn't work, yeah, it works. So I can open it on Power BI service. So this is the web portal of Power BI. I'm connected with the account of my company. So I can find the report, which has his associated data set, which is this one. This is the report. As you know, I can interact with it. I can use the drill down features. I can even put some filters and so on. Great. So two things I want to show you. The first thing is about the refresh. I want to make sure all the steps that I've done in Power BI Desktop are fully automated. And I want to be able to refresh this dashboard from the service. I don't want to go back to Power BI Desktop, reapply the different steps, click manually on update, republish it to the service, and so on. I want to make this a virtual cycle. I did it once, okay? I applied the best practices of Power BI. Usually, and normally, I would not expect to run into troubles in terms of refreshes and performance and so on. So I just want to make sure this is fully automated. Well, in this case, you need to use a gateway, right, to make this automated. There are two gateways that you can use in Power BI. The first one at the enterprise level is the on-premise data gateway, which you can install and deploy on virtual machines, and several users can get access to it, launch, set up some data sources. The gateway administrator can put these users into the sources which are part of the gateway and thus refresh the data. There is another gateway I'm going to show you right now. This is the personal gateway. So this only works on your computer, and you can actually use your own computer as a gateway to refresh the data. So you don't need anyone else, but basically. So I have this gateway installed on my machine. I'm just gonna go to schedule refresh. Okay. So this is my gateway, personal mode, as you can see. It's running on my computer. And I'm gonna be able to use this gateway to refresh my data from the service, either manually, I could simply say, okay, refresh, or by scheduling it. So this is an interesting feature. Just gonna edit my credentials here. Okay, this is anonymous. My gateway is working, my credentials are okay. So now I'm able to schedule my refresh. So let's say, yeah, daily, I can add many hours. I think it's up to 48 times if you're in premium, 24 times if you're a pro, and maybe 12 times if you're a free user. Because now even free users can use the personal gateway and do all the things that I've shown you today can be done by a free user. You don't even need a pro account, right? Because we simply connect it to data sources using the personal gateway, and then from this I can apply. Okay, I forgot to put some times and so on. Okay, so I can apply. So here I have my schedule refresh report. I just need my computer to be turned on and connected to the internet at each time it is supposed to be refreshed. But I don't need to go back to Power BI desktop and republish the stuff and so on. The last thing I want to show you is this one. So I can create a dashboard out of it if I want to share it to other people. So file. Yeah, so I can publish it to the web from the report. So this is what I've done to publish it to the data storage gallery. Okay, maybe I can quickly show you at the end of the demo. This publish to web can be done at the report level and can be done by a free user. This is the only way of publishing that has not been impacted by premium. A free user can still share dashboards, reports to the web. Well, obviously, in a business context, it doesn't really make sense. You don't want your data and your dashboards to be anywhere on the web. But yeah, still in this context, when you have personal projects or data that you don't care of, you can simply use the free license and put it to the web. So I'm just gonna pin some elements to a dashboard. So let's put the calls. Messi World Tour. Put here. And probably, yeah, let's say this one. So I'm just pinning some elements of this report to a dashboard, which is the ultimate level in Power BI service. From this dashboard, I can do a couple of things which are interesting. I can share it to my colleagues. They need to have a pro license or to be part of a premium tenant with dedicated capacity. I need to be a pro user to do so as well. I can I can query the data using natural language. I'm going to show you quickly how to do so. Put it as a favorite. Add tiles. See the metrics. If I share it to other people, I can see who actually shown it. Sorry. I can also design it for phone. So this is the dashboard that I want to display on my phone. Okay, so maybe I'm just gonna quickly move this. Okay, just doing some weird stuff. Okay, this is ugly, but anyway. So the last thing is Microsoft always says data anywhere at any time and so on. So I'm gonna show you how you can concretely do this kind of stuff. I'm gonna show you how you can query this data using natural language on an iPhone. So I'm just gonna display the screen of my phone. There we go. So I'm using the MS Power BI app, right? It's free. You can download it on Android Market, Apple Store, and so on. So I'm connected with my account. I'm just gonna grab in my favorites. Yeah, there we go. We have it. So you can see how fast it is. So now I have the dashboard on my iPhone, right? With the different graphs I've pinned to my dashboard. I can, from this, let me just check something. Yeah. So I can share it to other people from my mobile. I can do a couple of things, like even at the report level, I can annotate it. Let me just quickly show you this. I'm gonna go to my own workspace. At the report level, Messi dashboard. So this sounds like a gadget, right? You will say, yeah, I don't really care. But when I see all these people on the streets and metro using their iPhones for email and so on, I would expect that within the 5 years, most of the decisions taken by managers will be based on phones. I'm sure about this. And having this ability to be able to see the dashboard on the phone, I think is really interesting. And you can go much further than just a simple analysis, because you can annotate the graph, put some stuff here that you can reshare to people. So this is really convenient when you're in the metro and so on. But the last thing I wanted to show you actually is not this one, is the query in natural language. So I'm just gonna go to the dashboard, and this is my virtual analyst, okay? So this is basically the robot which is gonna replace all our jobs in 5 years. This is really smart. I mean, it's a smart assistant. You can ask him some questions about the data using natural language, and he will answer your question, plus finding some interesting additional insights. So I'm just gonna send him a text, goals per game, okay? And hopefully, yeah, it finds the metric, and it also finds some other insights. For example, this one is pretty interesting. The goals per game is trading upwards for quarter number 3. Okay, so apparently Messi scores many goals per game at the end of the season. I can even keep the conversation using natural language. Okay, so this one usually works when I'm alone and never works when I show it to other people, but let's try. For 2016. And it understands alone that I want to, that I want to see my goals per game for 2016, right? So as you can see, you can really have a discussion with your assistant on the phone and ask the data. So this is pretty useful. And I'm sure this is not a gadget, and this will be used within the next years, for sure. Okay, so if we just try to summarize, I don't know if you realize, but in less than an hour, we started from nothing, right? We had a blank page. We knew more or less where we wanted to go. We could grab data from the web, build a data model by cleaning it first, building a dashboard, and then in less than an hour, we have kind of a beautiful dashboard that is schedulally refreshed and that we can query using natural language in any device. Well, that's pretty good, right? And all this thing pretty much for free. So I mean, yeah, this is a cool feature, and I really wanted to show you this example of Messi to show how Power BI can really help you get insights from data and help you discover amazing stuff. So thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you liked it, and the session will be available after, yeah, obviously. Thank you very much.